When we are talking about citing library database articles from databases like General OneFile, CINAHL, PsycInfo, these sort of databases are going to be made up of different kinds of articles. Most of our databases have a combination of magazines, journals, and newspaper articles. And the citation style, while similar, each one of them does require an author and a title and a date, each one of them is slightly different from the other, so that you must know what is it that you're dealing with to know how to cite it. Journal articles, when you're citing an APA style, mostly you'll be using scholarly resources, though obviously not always, but more often than not, APA style is looking at scholarly works. And journal articles are where those works are going to be found. Journals break up into two different kinds. There are journals that are continuously paginated, and there are journals that are separately paginated. Continuous pagination is when the first issue of a journal go from, let's say, page 1 to page 62, and then the next issue starts with page 63. So in any given year, you have a volume from a journal, and over the course of that year, that volume breaks up into multiple issues. For instance, here is the Journal of Abnormal Psychology. You'll notice that we are looking at the 2009 volume 118, issue number 4, goes with November. I can see that the first article starts on page 683 and goes to page 698. What this tells me is that the last article in the third issue ended somewhere around page 683. And there it is on page 681. So what happened here is the third issue ended on page 681, and the fourth issue just picked up from where the last one left off, page 683. That would be a continuously paginated journal because it just continued the page numbers. Over the course of a year, there will be only one page 683, so that I can't confuse that page for any other page. Separate pagination, on the other hand, is when each journal issue starts over again, so that throughout the course of any given volume, each issue is going to start over again with page 1. If a journal comes out 4 times or 6 times or 12 times, that means there could be 4 page 1s or 6 page 1s or 12 page 1s. Now we need to include that issue number so that we can really identify which particular issue we are talking about. And in this case, you can see the ACC Current Journal Review. Over here, each issue as it comes out starts on page 1. That lets us know that this is likely to be a separately paginated journal. The other thing that APA requires, besides knowing if you've got a journal that's separately or continuously paginated, is something called a DOI. A DOI is very similar to a URL or a web address in that it sort of points you towards an item. Here's where this thing is located. But it is actually much more like a social security number in that it is a unique ID that is permanently linked to this thing. Much like your social is attached to you, this DOI follows this item around and is its ID. And it can be many different things: journal articles, books, images, software, and so on. These things can be rather tricky to find. All of our databases do them slightly different. Some are very, very easily able to be found. Some, on the other hand, are very tricky. To find whether or not the article you have in front of you has a DOI, there are several places to look. In this article, I can see that I have the Show Details link. Oftentimes, Show Details will include a DOI link or information right here. Not in this case. The other places we say to look are at the top of your article. So there was my abstract, and here's my true article. So I'm looking here, I'm looking there, and I don't see it. If it's not at the top of your article, we suggest looking at the end of your article. Now, where the article ends can be to some point of discussion. Does my article end here? Because here are simply my references, so would I look here? Sometimes that's a good place to look, right before the references. Other times the other place to look would be after the references. And down all the way after my references, and in fact actually after my author statement telling me who the authors of this article are, here is my digital object identifier. And you will know that DOI because it usually starts with that 10 dot something. If you don't see it, or it's hard to find when you're looking at the text of an article, the other place that is sometimes easier to spot, if your article has a PDF link, because the PDF looks like a photocopy of your article, it can sometimes help these things stand out better. I'm looking on the first page, and sometimes it will be right down here where they will give you other information about the article itself. And again, we say come to the end of your article. In our print article, it actually did come at the bottom of the references, but here you can see it. So there it is. It's even a nicer different color, so that might help it stand out a little bit. But that whole thing right there, that 10 to the 305, is my DOI. And what you need when you're doing a DOI is to include that lowercase doi. And sometimes they look a little different. Some are very short, some of them very long. It really depends. So if we're going to cite a magazine article, and let's just say I had this article, something called a Kodak moment. So I'm looking at this article, and I'm going to click on Show Details to see there's my author, although she is down there as well. I know that she will become Gibbs L, right? Last name, comma, first initial, period. Because this is a magazine article, we would want the year, a comma, the month spelled out, and then the day, which I can see comes from this section right here. The next thing I want is the title of my article, and here's where that proper noun comes in, right? Because Kodak, being the name of a company, is a proper noun, and it does get capitalized. So A, Kodak, capitalized. The next thing I need is the name of my source. The source is where your item is originally published in, and in this case the name of my magazine was Money, and I can see that from the blue italics. There's the name of my source. Next comes the volume number, which comes there as well when I'm looking at the screen. 32 is the volume, 8 is the issue. It's a magazine, and all magazines care about is the volume, so the fact that I know the issue is great, but it doesn't get included in my citation. And the last thing I need is my page number. Well, it's on page 40, and it's only 224 words. It doesn't go for very long. I can very safely look at that and say that is a one-page article. Sometimes those titles can be confusing. You will notice we have a whole lot of stuff here in parentheses. Generally speaking, your title is up to the parentheses, and then it stops. What the parentheses are usually magazine names or sections from the magazine, a little bit of description, Eastman Kodak Company stock analysis, and often letting you know if this is a long or short article. While all of these things are great and nice, they are not the title of your article. When you have the PDF, you can pull that up and see what the article looked like on the page it was printed on, and you will be more easily able to identify what are true titles and what are not. Lastly, however, we need that retrieval information, and not having a DOI, as this one does not. There's no DOI here, there's no DOI in my article anywhere, and there's nowhere for me to go and look at the PDF. I know this is an article without DOI, so we need to have the words retrieved from, and then what we need to include is the URL for the home page of the magazine. And this is the same process for whether you have a journal article, a newspaper, or a magazine article. This is not as hard as it seems. When you are looking for them, you can see I've put inside quotes, Money Magazine, and you can see that the first thing that comes up is money.cnn.com. Now, what do I know about Money? Not that much. When you click on the name of a magazine or a journal, when you're in the database, they'll tell you something. I can tell that this is owned by Time Incorporated. Sometimes clicking on the name will get you a URL. Sometimes it gives you the name of the company that owns it, and that's helpful as well. Is CNN a Time company? I don't know. I know that CNN Money is a service of CNN, Fortune, and Money. This could very well be Time who owns all of this. The way to maybe check this would be to scroll all the way down to the bottom and see where the copyright is. I see Time Warner. So this is probably the Money magazine that I'm looking for, only I've got this long page full of stuff, and none of these look to actually be the magazine. I have subscribed, but subscription pages don't quite count. When I'm looking for a home page for a magazine or a newspaper or a journal, usually I am able to get to past issues. I'm able to search the magazine itself. That tells me you're on a magazine or a newspaper or a journal page. And when you're scrolling through this website, you'll see down below a listing. There's Money. Let's go to Money Magazine. And now I can see the magazine archive. I can search the magazine archive, and I am looking at the articles. This is the homepage for Money. So here is the URL up at the top that you would want to use from your retrieved from, and so it's copy and paste. And you'll notice there is no period at the end of that URL, because otherwise it will be assumed to be part of the URL. When you put it all together, there's the front of my article, and there is my retrieval statement on the end of it, and it is obviously all double-spaced with those second and third lines indented. When you do have a DOI, and this is a journal article with a DOI, here's my articles. I do have all of the information I need to create this citation. Generally speaking, it's going to be here. There's my authors, there's my source, my volume, my issue, obviously my year, my page numbers. As we've already seen, we know this was on those pages. My title. What I'm missing is that DOI, but it's easy enough to find it in this database. This is Psych Info, because down here is my digital object identifier. Psych Info, Psych Articles. This also has a very nice feature though. When you have to create an APA citation from this screen, if you put a check mark next to the title and click on Display, you can see that it does give me this full record display choice, which I don't want. But what it does have is Citation APA Style. And what it just did was create an APA citation, which is pretty much perfect APA with a few possible exceptions. You do have to be careful sometimes that they have italicized what is supposed to be italicized. The Journal of Abnormal Psych is supposed to be italicized, as is the volume. I have never seen them to be wrong in whether they tell me something is continuously versus separately paginated, so there's no issue number included. And there's my DOI, which we are happy with, but the other thing that hasn't been done correctly, however, is my spacing and my indentation. So if you were to copy and paste this as it stands, you would need to do double spacing, you would need to do an indent for those guys. And obviously we're all otherwise happy with it. The title was capitalized correctly. PsycInfo is the only database I know that will give you an otherwise flawless APA citation. None of the others, as of yet, do so. If you have any questions about creating APA citation or any citation, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us at the library, as I showed you at the beginning of this tutorial.